Bismillah Rahman Rahim. This is lecture number 25th. The name of the paper is Literary Criticism 1. The book we have been studying is On the Sublime by Longinus, and the topic is the three principles followed by the writers of both Longinus time and 18th century. So today we'll discuss what were those three principles which were followed by the people who lived at the time when Longinus lived, the writers, and the writers of the 18th century. This lecture is specifically for the students of BS English 5th semester GDC PUBI, and it is also for the students of those colleges which are affiliated with Abdul Wali Khan University. The principles of the time of Longinus, when Longinus was present, either 1st century or 3rd century, we are not sure about that. Uh, that was the time when three principles were followed, and the same was the case then in 18th century when Pope and Dryden were the famous and dominating poets. The three principles in both these ages, the 3rd century and the 18th century, this was after 15th centuries of after Longinus. These principles were: number one, knowledge; number two, imitation; and number three, practice. The explanation comes here. By knowledge, the poets and the writers of 18th century and the writers of Longinus time, they believed that we should have the knowledge of ancients in order to be the best type of writers. And the ancients were the Greek writers, and the knowledge of those Greek writers was very important for the sublime, according to them, and was very important for becoming famous, for becoming excellent. So you should have a lot of knowledge. You should be a man of learning in order to become a great poet. So it is a matter of knowledge of the ancients and a matter of general knowledge uh, about the books, about the writings of others that will make you a great writer. So this knowledge of the ancient was important, which is our first point. That was the time, even in 18th century and in Longinus time, that Aristotle was considered extremely important. Some laws were extracted from his poetics, and these rules and laws drawn from the poetics were followed. And Aristotle was believed to be a lawgiver, and a new interpretation of Aristotle came, and these interpretations were actually based on the misinterpretation of Aristotle. So, though the point is the knowledge of the great writers, ancient great writers, Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides. However, this knowledge was a kind of misinterpretation because they did not follow the spirit, they followed the outer garment, the outer dress. So, this knowledge which they were referring to was the outside knowledge and not the spirit of the age. Even that interpretation of Aristotle was a kind of misinterpretation. The second point is imitation. These people of these two ages, Longinus and 18th century, they were the kind of people which can be referred to as traditionalist, because in order to learn something, especially poetry, they looked back to the past and they thought that we can achieve perfection, we can achieve sublime, they thought, and they wrongly thought so, by modeling what we are writing on the writers of the ancient Greece. So the point was that these past models must be imitated in order to become great poets, great dramatists. We should imitate the ancients. We should imitate Homer if we want to write epics. We should imitate the method of Aristophanes if we want to become expert in comedies, and that we should imitate tragedies of Aeschylus and Sophocles in order to become the best of the tragedian. So these people should be imitated. This imitation has also been used by Plato and Aristotle, but the meaning here is different. Um, these writers of 18th century and Longinus time, they use this word imitation in a different way. Imitation meant to follow the methods used by Homer, Sophocles, and Aeschylus. And the methods include diction, the use of words, great words, versification, and meter. All these diction, versification, meter are actually the outward garment and not the spirit. These can be included in the technical aspect of poetry, but not the spirit of poetry. So they left the spirit and they got only the dress, which was the technical aspect of poetry. This was the second point. The first was to have knowledge of the ancient writers, Greek writers. The second was to imitate them, but the method was imitated, not the spirit, and that was the problem. The third is practice. They believed that practice makes people perfect, the writers perfect. And this was the thought of the Hellenistic writers. I've told you before, there is difference between Hellenic and Hellenistic. Hellenic age was the age of Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, Euripides, Aeschylus, and Sophocles. Oh, while Hellenistic age was later on, and that was the age in which the spirit was not followed, spirit of Greek writers, but only the method was followed. So this was a kind of decline uh, in literature, decline in literature of the time of Longinus. And Longinus understood that this is the decline, taking only the dress, leaving behind the spirit. So that's why he wrote this book on the sublime. And he believed that greatness cannot be achieved by imitation, by imitating only the body, the diction, the versification, the meter, and leaving out the spirit would not give you something which is sublime. His own emphasis, however, was on the spirit, the emotion, the passion, and he also did not ignore the form, the diction, the meter, that was not ignored. So he kind of combined these two, the spirit, that is the inner form, and the method, that is the outer form. So these were the three rules which were followed by them, and this made this decline in poetry. This part is actually the summary of what you will study in this book on the sublime. In this book, Longinus first defines sublimity. He tells about its effect, what is the effect of sublimity, and then the test of sublimity. How would you find out that the work is sublime or not. After this, in this book, we will find the sources of sublimity, and he illustrates this by giving us quotations from different writers, and all the quotations he refers to show that he had a perfect taste and perfect judgment. He also analyzes the quotations, a kind of analysis, and he gives us practical criticism as well as theoretical criticism. And his ideas, the way he describes all these things, are different from the way Aristotle did. So the three principles, to repeat, are these three. हम इसको उर्दू में कर लेते हैं अभी. 3 प्रिंसिपल्स फॉलो होते थे लॉन्जाइनस के ज़माने के राइटर्स और 18th सेंचुरी के राइटर्स, और इन 3 प्रिंसिपल्स को उन्होंने ऐसे फॉलो किया कि इनके लिए फॉल्स सबलाइम या सूडो क्लासिक का नाम इसकी वजह से आया. पहला ये था कि अगर आप ग्रेट राइटर बनना चाहते हैं तो आपको नॉलेज होना चाहिए एंशंट राइटर्स का, ग्रीक राइटर्स का, और उनकी मेथड का. खास तौर पे अरिस्टोटल को चूंकि लॉ गिवर समझा जाता था तो रूल पोएटिक से माखूज होते थे और अक्सर ये रूल्स मिस इंटरप्रेट होते थे. इनकी तफसील जो बताई जाती थी वो अरिस्टोटल की जिस तरह थी उस तरह नहीं थी. तो एक तो हो गया नॉलेज, दूसरा इमिटेशन उनके ख्याल में होना चाहिए था, और इमिटेशन उन लोगों का जो ग्रीक के ज़बरदस्त राइटर्स थे उनकी मेथड्स का इमिटेशन, मैनर का इमिटेशन, ना कि स्पिरिट का. लिहाजा पास्ट मॉडल्स को देखना चाहिए उनके ख्याल में. अगर आप एपिक लिखना चाहते हैं तो होमर को देखें, अगर आप कॉमेडी लिखना चाहते हैं तो अरिस्टोफेनीज के तरीके को देखें, अगर आप ट्रेजेडी लिखना चाहते हैं तो एस्किलस, सोफोक्लीज, यूरिपिडीज के तरीकों को अपनाएं और इनको इमिटेट करें. ये जो इमिटेशन का लफ्ज़ है ये प्लेटो और अरिस्टोटल ने भी यूज़ किया था, लेकिन ये इसका जो यूज़ है वो डिफरेंट है, क्योंकि ये जो माना लेता है इमिटेशन का वो है इन लोगों की इमिटेशन, होमर की इमिटेशन एपिक्स में, सोफोक्लीज, एस्किलस की ट्रेजेडीज में, और ये इमिटेशन ख़ास तौर पे बेस्ड थी डिक्शन, वर्सिफिकेशन और मीटर पर. और ये 3 अगर आप ले लें तो ये आउटर फॉर्म की इमिटेशन है, ये टेक्निकल एस्पेक्ट है पोइट्री का. ये जो इनर फॉर्म है पोइट्री में, जो पैशन पाया जाता है उसकी इमिटेशन नहीं है, जो स्पिरिट है उसकी इमिटेशन नहीं है. तीसरी जो बात थी वो थी प्रैक्टिस की, कि प्रैक्टिस इंसान को परफेक्ट बनाता है. तो अगर आप परफेक्ट राइटर बनना चाहते हैं इनके ख्याल में तो आपको बहुत प्रैक्टिस करनी चाहिए, और सिर्फ प्रैक्टिस आपको एक अच्छा राइटर बनाती है, और ये कुदरती तौर पे नहीं होता बल्कि आप इसको अचीव करते हैं. और इसी वजह से ये डिक्लाइन हुआ पोइट्री का, क्योंकि उन्होंने सिर्फ प्रैक्टिस को और वर्सिफिकेशन को सब कुछ माना. और इस डिक्लाइन को लॉन्जाइनस समझ गया था, इसी वजह से इसने ऑन द सब्लाइम बुक लिखी कि सब्लिमिटी ये सिर्फ इमिटेशन से नहीं होगी बल्कि सब्लिमिटी होगी स्पिरिट और इमोशन. हाँ, इमिटेशन ऑफ फॉर्म भी होने चाहिए, लेकिन स्पिरिट और इमोशन ये ज़रूरी है, और फॉर्म भी होना चाहिए. तो ये इसके बाद ये इस किताब की समरी है कि ऑन द सब्लाइम में सब्लाइम की डेफिनेशन होगी, फिर सब्लिमिटी के असरात पे बात होगी, फिर टेस्ट की बात होगी कि सब्लिमिटी को कैसे टेस्ट किया जाए कि इन लाइनों में है कि नहीं है. नेक्स्ट टॉपिक होगा कि सब्लाइम के सोर्सेस क्या हैं, कहाँ किन चीज़ों से सब्लिमिटी हासिल होती है, मुख्तलिफ राइटर्स को कोट करता है, اور ہمیں پتہ چلتا ہے کہ اس کی ٹیسٹ اور لانجائنس کی ججمنٹ یہ زبردست ہے، انالیسس بھی دیتا ہے، پریکٹیکل کرٹیسزم بھی کرتا ہے، تھیوریٹیکل بھی کرتا ہے، اور یہ ارسطاٹل سے ڈیفرنٹ طریقے سے کرتا ہے. تو ہماری کنکلوژن اور ریپیٹیشن اور ریویژن یہ ہے کہ 3 پرنسپل جو 18th سینچری اور لانجائنس ٹائم کے رائٹرز نے فالو کی اور وہ یہ تھیں، اور اس 3 کی وجہ سے، ان 3 کی مس انڈرسٹینڈنگ کی وجہ سے، صرف میتھڈ کو لینے کی وجہ سے یہ ناکامی کا سبب بنی، فالس سبلیمیٹی کا سبب بنی، اور سوڈو کلاسیسزم کی سبب بنی. ایک نالج، ایک امیٹیشن، نالج آف گریک رائٹرز، امیٹیشن آف گریک رائٹرز، اور پریکٹس. تو امیٹیشن آف گریک رائٹرز، ایکسلنٹ رائٹرز کی بری بات نہیں ہے، لیکن یہ امیٹیشن صرف ان کے آؤٹر فارم کی تھی، ٹیکنیکل اسپیکٹ کی تھی، اور اسپرٹ کی نہیں تھی. سو دیٹس آل اباؤٹ دیز 3 پرنسپلس. یہ ابھی تک جو ہم پڑھ رہے تھے، تو یہ چوتھا لیکچر ہے، اور یہ چاروں لیکچر تقریباً یہ آئیں گی ایک قسم کی انٹروڈکشن میں. اس کے بعد یہ جو شروع ہوگا تو یہ ایکچول جو کتاب میں چیزیں موجود ہیں، مثلاً سبلائم کیا ہے، تو یہ ہمارا پہلا لیکچر ہوگا ایکچول چیز کا، جو کہ انٹروڈکشن کے بعد ہوگی. That would be the next lecture. Thank you and good luck.